mostly Unreal Engine and VP Toolkit for in-camera VFX.
Okay. Okay. So you are already recording, Stephanie? You are mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're recording, Stephanie? Yeah?
Yeah, let me wait. Oop.
Okay, we are live in YouTube already, and 3 minutes to go.
Awesome.
There. Now you're live. Now.
Great. So we already have some people. I'm guessing we have 5 more attendees, 6, 8, and there's more people coming. So we're going to start in a few minutes.
Awesome. Welcome.
Welcome everybody.
Welcome to the show, everybody.
Okay, now we are set up.
Okay, we are almost ready. 2 minutes to go. We're going to be live in YouTube, and we're going to be recording this. This will be edited and streamed in the social media in all the channels that we can get our hands on. So there's going to be a lot of this information is going to be available for many people all around the world. We also have people from the US, I guess, right, Stephanie?
Yes, yes. Some friends as well.
Great.
Yeah, I saw a good amount of, I had a good amount of people, colleagues of mine, that said they were going to join.
Okay, great. Excellent.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, 14, 15, 16 attendees already.
Okay.
Great. So I'm going to start in Spanish and then switch to English so
Okay.
that everybody knows. We'll try to say the same thing. Great.
Okay. Now we're 6 p.m.
Ready? Great. Excellent. Bien. Bienvenidos a este evento traído por Nova. La intención es compartir con ustedes información que seguramente les va a impresionar. Se está fusionando lo que es habilidades, conocimiento y tecnología de primera línea. Van a ver cosas increíbles que Ian nos trae. Voy a presentarlo en un momento. Nova es un desarrollador de contenido, trabaja en lead generation y propiedad intelectual para la creación de series de televisión y productos comerciales. Este evento se está llevando a cabo para toda Latinoamérica y para América, con la intención de llevarles cada día un referente de la industria. Y en este caso tenemos a alguien muy impresionante. Voy a hacer el cambio a inglés para poder avanzar y poder dejar todo el evento en manos de Ian. So welcome to this event, everybody. We are very pleased that you are with us this afternoon, coming into the night. And we are very pleased to share this information that we are very, very happy to believe that it's going to make an impact in the lives and in the companies that are with us today. We are joined by Nova team by Stephanie. Stephanie is our digital animation producer, and our guest, Ian Fursa, who is a virtual production supervisor. He is the founder of VP Toolkit. Please look it up in the internet. There's a lot of good information there. And co-founder of Catalyst Virtual. And finally, who speaks to you as Nova director, my name is Victor. The topics we're going to cover today are what's in-camera VFX virtual production, how can it help your company create original content, what's involved to utilize this new technology, how VP Toolkit is making it easier every day, and what does this information and technology will bring in the future of commercial production. So thank you again, Stephanie, on your hands.
Yes, well, thank you. Thank you very much to everyone who is joining us today in this new masterclass and the starting of the new year, 2023. We are very excited to learn more about virtual production oriented in the commercial side. And well, many companies and professionals have opted to immerse themselves in these new technologies by incorporating tools and resources for their marketing pipelines as well. And a distinguished approach in using virtual production toolkits is to be in any location instantly and bring your brand to life. So to continue, we always invite you, everyone, to participate. Raise your hand if you have any question you can ask during the live in order to assist you with your questions during this live event. And now we are with Ian Fursa, as we have mentioned before, and we would like to start by untangling his story and in his wide world experience in this field. So Ian, this is all yours now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So today we're going to talk about in-camera VFX virtual production. So that's using an LED wall in most cases. Today I'm going to do a demonstration that we're going to be using a small TV to just show it in a small scale that you can do even in an office with products or things like that to be able to experiment before you're on a large stage. It's also a good way to test your environment. And so I'm gonna just play this video a little bit here. So I'm a virtual production supervisor. That's what I'm called on set now. That has had a couple names thrown to it across the years. I've been doing this for like 3 years now, which is kind of long for this field. And I traditionally was a director of photography and I ran a production company before I got into virtual production. So a lot of my passion towards this is in understanding the color, the lens optics, the storytelling, the pipeline, all of the aspects that you need to use this technology to tell better stories. I always like to start these things off with a little bit of a horror story. The first commercial shoot that I had worked on, this was very early on. This was in 2001, early 2001. And virtual production in camera VFX was what ILM did. And I was playing with it in my home studio and just experimenting with it because I had nothing else to do. It was COVID, and I was just enjoying that so much and trying to understand how to tell a story with this. And at that time, we had, the people that dove into it, we had time to develop this. But then I got hired to work on an MCM fashion brand shoot, which is like, MCM Global. It's a huge fashion brand. The director of photography was Stuart Dryberg, who just filmed The Last Men in Black movie. Maybe the one before the last one. I'm not sure if I'm totally caught up on them. But and it was a total mess because Unreal Engine was just not designed to make films. It just wasn't. And the language between those worlds. So that's when I started building my own tool set and my own kind of pipelines to be able to better service productions. And most of the other companies that were doing this were studios that were building their own internal tools. But I thought it would be cool to allow other people to be able to use these tools. And over that time, first it was a free project, then it became a free plugin, then it was like $100 plugin. And then, you know what I mean? We put a lot of time into it, and I built a small team around it. And now it's VP Toolkit. We try to help service productions or people that are starting in-camera VFX or trying to build up their own studios. We have like services and then I also, like right now, I'm on a 6-episode series show that's filming in pre-production. So we're going through these environments right now and planning with our production design and all of that. So that's a little bit of a background on where I'm at.
Wow.
And of course, in there's all of the, worked for Netflix, worked for, HBO, worked on, the general name calls.
Great. Excellent. Excellent. That's just amazing.
Yeah. So I'll move into, so what is in-camera VFX, virtual production? I generally say we render backgrounds behind real life props, talent, and set. So what we're doing is we're taking virtual worlds, and then we're creating a display for the camera. That display for the camera, we call the inner frustum. That travels around as the camera moves and goes directly behind the camera, so that what you see on your set monitor, on your camera's view, is fully customizable, and you can adjust specifically for that shot, for that camera, for that exposure. And this is something that you need to get right in the calibration throughout it. And these pipelines, and procedures are still being built up and still being standardized. And I've been very much in the color pipeline world, and it's crazy because it's too complicated to try and put into pictures like this. So we have to kind of generalize this a little bit when it comes to the technical side. But so that's what our camera sees, is that little black block there, or a darker block. It's because we have it exposed for camera. And then outside of that is the outer frustum. So we also, you can just call it outside of the camera. What that's used for is to light your environment and for reflections. You can see it's a lot brighter because we wanted to get some ambient light from it. We wanted it to spill onto our environment. And then,
so it doesn't matter what
kind
of images do you have in the outside the camera side, right? I mean, you just need the light.
Yeah. I mean, you can change things, but generally what you do is you make it so that perspective, so what is outside of what the camera sees, is actually from the perspective of wherever your talent is. So then if you have, like in The Mandalorian, a guy with a shiny helmet, then everything outside of what that camera sees, which is, I'll talk about in a second, which is tracked with a tracker, is rendering from that perspective and gives you accurate reflections and accurate lighting like your characters in that environment. So we use Unreal Engine to render these scenes. This is also all set up with the VP Toolkit Studio plugin for pre-visualizing your productions and calibrating your stage on the go, and controlling your stage, things like, how big is the view into the scene? What camera sensor settings are we using? It's everything from that to where are we positioning the camera and the LED wall ahead of time, so that when we get onto one of these sets, we know exactly what we're doing.
Right.
So
like having an order, because that is so important, having an order of what you really want to do, then not waste time as well. Yeah,
it's a pipeline. It's those things that you have to develop. So a very important part of that is matching the camera in exposure, lens settings, color, and very importantly, its position, its location. So we use camera tracking to track the real cameras in physical space, and then tell our virtual camera that's giving our background its render where it's at. So we're connecting that virtual and that physical camera using this tracking system to then, so this is a Vive Mars. This is like a $5,000 USD unit that is very good for smaller studios or people that want to start developing this in an office or something like that, where tracking systems can range from, they can come from literally like, you got the $5,000 range. You could get a Vive Mars, a regular Vive set and make it work. It just takes a little bit of tinkering. Or you can spend, $200,000 on a very small, OptiTrack kit, or $500,000 on a Vicon kit. So when we talk like bigger movies and things like that, they have customized versions of Vicon, which is a traditionally a motion capture system. But so here we're just using the Vive. This is also what we're using on camera for the demonstration that I'm doing later. We also get lens data. So this is this can come directly out of a camera lens if you are on a fairly professional set and you have lenses that support this. You can port this right out of a camera and it will tell you exactly where your focal distance is and your aperture is. Here we're using the low lead low lead encoder. And I think there's going to be a decent amount of companies that are coming out with those units very soon because they're in high demand for what we do. And since it's growing so fast, it's starting to meet that demand. So that all gets received in the VP Toolkit plugin. So it's a little blurry here because this is a screen grab of a low res video. So I apologize, but we'll take a look at this UI when we get into the demonstration very quickly. So this is how it handles the tracking system, how it handles lens data, and how it handles all of the features that we've also added on top of what the engine could do. So that all results in a final image, which is what you're going to sell with your commercial, how you're going to sell your product, or how you're going to tell your story is what you want to do. This is actually we created a depth of field focus solving system that calculates the depth of field fall off into the LED wall, because when you drive the camera directly straight with Unreal Engine, it actually has a layering effect. So we've built in some tools. I love this stuff. This is the thing that I nerd out on because I spend hours and hours.
It doesn't show. So please go on.
Hours and hours and hours because I love the optics. I love, how do we make it look real? So how is in-camera VFX virtual production being used today? So let's take a look at some examples. I was not on this, but this is the Batman. This is a very good use of this technology. You can see they have practical set, and then behind them is the LED wall. If you actually, let me see, I can pause a little bit here and there. So this is actually them doing plates for driving. So if you take a look at the LED wall, you can see it's, here's the seam of it. This is all LED wall. We have a guy, Batman on the motorcycle over here, and we have a little bit of blue screen probably capturing something. This might even be for reflections, and they might actually be just filming the blue screen.
Is it better to have a curved LED screen, Ian?
So the reason, that's a long thing because it depends upon what you're filming and what your plans are. Generally, having a little bit of a curve in a screen is a good idea because of the fact that you're going to be able to get more width out of it. You're going to be able to, you're going to have these edges that kind of flare out, and that gives you the ability to kind of, excuse me, not just go off the wall. But if you have too much of a curve too quickly, you run into this issue that when you back up, part of the wall is actually further away from you than other parts of the wall. And if you're looking at something that's supposed to be, at a certain distance virtually, you start to run into artifacts in depth of field that you might not notice, but you're adding more real depth of field for something that should be at, there's certain use cases that really lend itself to having a flat screen, but most people use curved screens. I think it's good. You just got to have a subtle curve and think about it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was, I'm not sure what render engine they used. So this is their LED wall setup.
Wow.
So big.
Just take a look at that for a second. So that's, if I had to spec something out like that, I'd probably say like $13 million. Like
That's a
12
lot of
million
money.
if you're building it from scratch, maybe. I mean, maybe like 8 to 12, I would assume. But yeah, so that's not what we're going to be doing in the commercial market. But another really good example of in-camera VFX virtual production is The Mandalorian. So this is a series that was shot, multiple episodes of each of their series were shot in the volume. So using the blend of the real props and the virtual backgrounds. There's some cool shots. And you can see the reflections and everything like that just line up really well. So if we actually take a look at this shot, this is a great blend. So that right there is where the LED wall seam most likely is. It may not be that curved because of however they have it set up here. So that means that everything that's behind our talent here, that's all virtual.
Okay,
So
you can put
is
whatever you want there. It's incredible.
Yep. Yeah, and you when you do this and you build a small, you build a team to do this, you start to figure out the ways to do it effectively, do it quickly. But it's that hurdle, that first hurdle that a lot of companies and people that try to adopt this run into, is the fact that they need to get the experience in it before they start day one of offering it to clients. And that doesn't take too much, that takes 2, demo projects or something. But it's always tough when, especially if you already have a huge clientele, you're going to want to get them in as fast as possible to get money back on your investment, on whatever you've invested into that space or your crew. So we looked at some big movies, some big budget movies that Hollywood, and they looked fantastic. So let's take a look at the commercial world. How is this being used in the commercial space? So the first couple videos I'm going to show are actually ones that I was virtual production supervisor for, and I ran remotely. So there was a small crew that we had on site, and they were Pierdo. This was in Peru, actually.
Oh,
Really?
wow.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so all of these were filmed in Peru with I'm spacing on their name, but we'll be able to find them. We'll put a link somewhere. But yeah, so these were fairly small crews, and we would literally get in there, and prop department would run in and start dressing the set, and then I'll let this play, and we'll talk about it in a second here. So, your standard beverage commercial. So let's just take a look at this shot here. So you probably, I'm hoping everybody on here is already trying to guess what is virtual and what is not.
Yeah.
So that's where our LED wall seam is, right there.
Okay.
And then that is all virtual. So these props right here, circled in red, I probably could have made that red a little bigger, but that's all the physical props. And then we just kind of set them in a way that makes sense with the virtual world. I actually remember on this call, on the left here, on this table and this table over here. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse on there.
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
left.
we can see it.
But originally this table was in the same physical space as this table. And I was like, you got to move that table over. And I said, you can't, it's going to look like it's in the same spot. Like, you have to do it. So we can take a look at another one here. So let me just let this roll. We're going to have a few of these. Everybody will get the point by the end. So that our LED wall is actually underneath, below the couch, because it's best to just block it. If you can block the seam between where your physical and your virtual meets, you can sell it so much easier. So everything back there in the blue is virtual. The hallway, everything.
So if you use a green screen, will be quite a big difference between the two techniques, right?
Yeah, so the main difference between, it's funny that you say that, because that shot that you just saw right here, it's coming. But the shot right here, we actually turned the inner frustum, what the camera was seeing, into a green screen so that they could composite over it. So if you watch when he sits down and we go like this, all we did was we turned the background into green screen, and then they could just composite it however they wanted. But the main difference is that there's limitations to both. With green screen, you're not going to be able to get lens optics. You're not going to get proper lens optics unless you're like Disney. You're not going to get all of the characteristics of your camera, and you're also going to have to do a lot in post. You're going to have to go into post and build your backgrounds and things like that. And a lot of creatives are starting to really enjoy doing this because this is all in camera. Like, we walked away and this was just editing and color grading. So there was no, you know what I mean? Besides graphics, there's no post effects here.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's going to be cheaper one day, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, it depends upon how you're doing it. It's like, if you're already doing these types of commercial productions consistently, then maybe it does make sense for you to open up a studio and figure out what that means, or make a relationship with, here's a behind the scenes of another commercial that I shot with the same crew. And here's another behind the scenes of a different, same cola, different commercial. So you can see what the camera sees. They actually put some props in front of the lens here, which is great. And then this is all virtual back here, behind here. And then we had a ceiling, which made it so that when you looked at the top of the car, the reflections on the car, you could see this tree just hanging over the car, and it looked really good.
Okay, Ian,
that was a good one. I wish I could find that. Go ahead.
Ian, we have 3 questions. I think, Stephanie, if you can help us with some.
All right, I'll just let this play while I answer.
The first one is Ryan Paz, and he's asking, what do you foresee as the next development in virtual production hardware solutions? Revolutionary tracking methods, better LED pixel manufacturing, new cameras?
I think all of them at the same time, because everybody's working on exactly that. Everybody's trying to make it easier and more precise. So you're going to have, I mean, AI tracking systems might become a thing very soon. If the problem is the delay. We're dealing with real time is a special beast, because you need to kind of almost defy physics to be able to do it right. So to get it perfect, you would have to be able to move the camera and it know that the camera's moving before you actually move the camera, so you can beat whatever delay you have. So definitely better tracking systems that are going to be able to handle that. Or, you know, if you use a robot or something like that, you may be able to even get better results than you could with the tracking system. So there's always a tool to do certain jobs. And then, yes, better LED pixels. I mean, it's literally like 1.9 is 1. So the LED walls their resolution is judged by pixel pitch. So that means how much space there is between each pixel of the LED wall. And this one that we're looking at right now on screen, I believe was like a 2.6 pixel pitch. So that's 2.6 millimeters, I think, in between the pixels. And it is not super high resolution, where now a lot of the LEDs that are going into smaller studios that are doing commercial work like this are 1.9, which is so much smaller. And you're talking about a less than 4K giant TV screen compared to a like 6K giant TV screen that takes up the same amount of space and is the same size and aspect ratio. But yeah, I think that I have no idea. AI might make us irrelevant if it gets good enough. So who knows? Let's just roll, keep rolling.
Okay, great.
All right, so this is one I'm super proud of this shot. So if you take a look at where this is another commercial that we did for Easy Pay. If you take a look at, that's where the scene was. So that means that everything behind there is virtual. I loved this because I had about 3 hours to relight this scene with the camera set up. So we actually had a stand-in camera. So we set a lot of lights and things like that. But once you have the camera set up, that's when you really know what you're looking at. You can build pipelines to be able to try and predict what it's going to look like on production, but putting a camera up and having access to a pre-light day or multiple pre-light days is going to be important. So I'll show you another one here. This one's really good because the girl in the background and the 3D printer back there are real, and then mostly everything else is not. So our wall seam is actually below him, so you don't see it. We've cut it off, have a little bit of headroom. So all of that is virtual. Even the signs in the background. This is a behind the scenes. This was actually the first time that we shot this environment on a different commercial. So this lighting is a little less clean and the environment wasn't fully done, but it was the only behind the scenes I had. So let's take a look at something that's a little more like high-end fashion brand. So this is the MCM shoot that I talked about earlier, that kind of I showed up and realized that we had a huge gap between what virtual production was at that time, but we pulled it off. You know what I mean? This is exactly to their brand. This is what they wanted. Like 90% of that was all in-camera VFX. So we also did Louis Vuitton. So this is Louis Vuitton watches. We did sunglasses as well. This is all plates. So this is just video playback of sequences on the LED wall and very clever filming. So
Wow.
I'll pause.
Oh, Ian, we have another question here.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's Paul Lee. He says, what's the challenge of using motion and dynamic characters as background in a virtual set to support live shooting?
You can't focus on them.
Okay.
So with in-camera VFX, what I'm gonna talk about in a little bit. I have a little diagram that just kind of shows you an overview of a stage, and I'm just gonna point some things out so that if anybody on here does a virtual production, they kind of have a short, quick roadmap of things that not to do. And but yeah, so really, I'm doing a huge pipeline right now for the show that I'm working on, that we're doing virtual background actors, and we have stunts meetings, and we're going through and going, okay, well, there's going to be a bad guy over there and he gets shot. And so all of the people in the background are going to be virtual, and you have to plan that out. If you saw but for actual trying to replace filming, I think we have a while until it's perfect. And sadly, yeah, we have a while until it's going to be perfect. But I mean, I'm hoping for the best there. It's like who knows? I mean, I'm the most analog person in probably this industry in so many ways, because I love classic filmmaking. I love filmmaking with lens and with people and showing that character. And I also really like animation and things like that. And anime has been a huge part of my life and storytelling in that way. But there's this weird middle ground where you can't quite get a character to feel real, but you have to make them so that they're not trying to feel real, so that you can still attach emotion to them. You can still have them tell your story without it trying to be. But there's tons of shows and movies now that are proving to be, extremely entertaining, as well as great storytelling and graphics. So I wanted to pause at this shot real quick. So this is that's actually the LED wall with playing like a stars background on the side there. And then to the right there is mirrors that are reflecting it. So you can get creative with how you do it, which you can't do that with the green screen.
Sure.
Like that's impossible. So that one had a lot of water. And so within camera VFX, you get reflections. So this is now we're moving to the music video space. I was a virtual production supervisor for this. And right behind that drummer is the virtual background. So literally his platform, we color got it so that it matched. This is another environment. So if we take a look at this is like a gas station. And then the wet, you see the wet down there. There's where our LED wall seam is. So that's where the practical, and so that's all virtual. So these lights that you see here, those ones are physical, and then the ones in the background are virtual. I definitely would have liked to dial that in more, but with music videos, sometimes it's really fast paced. That's why it's good to, get somebody involved that either has experience or can guide your production with experience until you can build a small internal crew that continues on that experience. All of those commercials that I shot before, we built a very quick system where they had 2 level artists that just built these environments, and then they knew how to install the VP Toolkit plugin into it and set up their shots and get them approved by production and make sure everybody's happy with what they're going to be. And then since they used that system, I would come in on the day and everything would be set up and ready to go. So, you know what I mean? They didn't need me to do all that because they had already done it. And then all we had to do is load it up and load up all of the things. So this is probably, this is the team that I'm most proud of, because we recreated the Brooklyn Bridge. Now, could the background be a little better? Yes, we could have built the city a little better. But this was a huge prop build. And I personally blended a lot of the assets and relit the scene based on what the cinematographer wanted, because originally this scene was actually supposed to be cloudy and things like that. And then as soon as we got on it, he had tungsten lights. So we're like, well, we got to go, we got to go sunset. So I matched the sun position and all of, how his lighting was virtually, so that it made sense. There's actually for people that know Unreal Engine, there's an extra spotlight hitting that back bridge, so that we got that orange with the shadows, because we just weren't getting it with what is called our directional light, which is our sun, our virtual sun. So sometimes you have to add in some lights and things like that to just motivate your scene and stylize it and make sure that it looks good, because that's the most important thing in the end, is that it blends correctly. So this is where
all that modeling and lighting and texturing, you outsource that, or you do it yourself, or do you have a team to do it?
So most of the time I have a team to do it. I do a lot of dialing in and fine tuning at the end. So it's a lot of building what's called texture parameters. So parameters within the assets that we can tweak, like subtle things of color and brightness, and just so that when we see it through a camera lens, because the problem is that every time a director of photography changes, or gaffer, or whoever you want to say is changing your light, changes your value, it changes the saturation, the gamma value, all of that of a physical prop. So to be able to get it to blend and actually not appear as sticking out, you need to be able to get into the base of that. You can't do it all in lighting. You can't do it all you can't use color correction. That doesn't work at all. You need to do it in the assets, because that's what that's what you have control over. You basically are repainting them so that they look correct through the pipeline.
Okay. There's some we have more. We have 10 questions. I'm gonna just shoot another one.
Shoot some questions.
It says Joseph Patala. Hi, Ian, ICVFX Unreal Engine Fellow here. I just wanted to say first that you have inspired me so much since I met you at the Fall Fellowship. Thank you so much for your continued contribution to the virtual production world. My question to you would be, do I really need to buy Mars system to have a high quality production when using the HTC vibe trackers to track my camera? Thank you in advance.
So basically all I'm going to say is all of those commercials that we shot in Peru, all HTC Vive regular trackers. Now, if you're offering your services to productions at a certain level, you need reliability and you need proper calibration, you need repeatability, and you need it to stick, or you need it to be able to recalibrate very quickly. The Vive Mars system, the regular and the Vive Mars system does that very well. That's what really its biggest strength is that you just put the thing on the ground and you recalibrate and you're back up and you can reconfigure things super easily and it connects very easily. I still use the Vive system, the regular Vive system, all the time in development and help people set that up. So yes, you can use that, but if you're going to offer your services to people, I recommend having something that, you know what I mean, is going to probably be a little more reliable than that.
Okay, let me just read another one from Giovanni Vasquez. Do you see these solutions being accessible to smaller production companies or community NPO-based video production groups? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so. I think there's a lot of organizations, I should say, that outside of companies, potentially companies, but nonprofit companies and things like that, that are building studios out of this education. I work a lot with colleges. Like the VP Toolkit is in like four different colleges now, and it's going to become more accessible. But you got to think about it. It's still going to be. This is still a business. This is still.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're still in production business land. Like I know I love virtual production so much, but it's still, you know, at the end of the day, you still have to know how to run a production studio. You still have to have income to pay for the building and all of that. So there is some more development style, like, but most of them are ran by educational facilities and nonprofits and things like that. But you may have to have a certain to get access to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So so basically, if you're going to do a virtual production in camera VFX virtual production, how do you do it without not, you know, not doing it really bad? So it definitely starts at pre-production. So that's a huge thing with our VP Toolkit plugin and our pipeline and all of that is like understanding what your physical and your virtual elements are doing with each other. It's very important to understanding all of that. And then when you're on set, there's a couple of rules that you kind of need to follow to get the best image. So let me see, this should switch to a new slide in a second. So here we go. So this is a top-down diagram of like a virtual production stage. Here's the LED wall, this black line, and then the blue like objects represent virtual objects. So you can see they're all kind of behind the LED wall. Some of them are kind of poking through slightly. Something very important is that you can't have virtual objects in a physical space. So when you're prepping your Unreal Engine environments, you have to understand that anything that's going to be physical can't be within the space of your physical, or going to be virtual, can't be within the space of your virtual thing, because your camera will render depth of field on it at the distance of the LED wall and not at the distance of the actual object. So imagine if this table here was virtual object, you would be partly focused on it, but what your camera would actually be doing is rendering the depth of field of it being back here.
Oh yeah.
Because that's where it's actually rendering. So that's very important to take into consideration when you're placing your object. Now you can fake it a little bit. You know, you can bring it through. Here I have an example where we would have a practical wall, and just to help production light this wall, to help the director of photography light this wall without spilling onto the LED wall, we brought our virtual wall out. I just put 30 centimeters. That doesn't actually it doesn't actually matter. So And the reason why we have that practical wall, we're not doing everything virtual, is because you can't focus on the LED wall itself. You can't actually, because it's pixels, it will give you artifacts that do not look good in camera. Sometimes they're red lines, sometimes they're just, you know, wavy things. I can show you in the setup in a few minutes. And basically this shows where these black lines here are where the camera's focal plane would be. So this is all the stuff that would be in focus. And based on this angle, you're very close to getting the wall in focus. So you have to think about this when you're planning out your shots and planning out, you can't just put the character, you know, right against the wall. And this is another reason why curved screens can be a little tough, is because you start to have less area that you can actually focus, because the edges of the wall could start to come into your camera's view. So another thing good to note here is we've used solids or flags or grids, for those that understand lighting, to block the light of our lights so that it doesn't hit the LED wall. Because when you spill light onto the LED wall, it lifts the contrast ratio. So basically, if you have something that's black and you light it, it becomes light gray. It doesn't become black anymore. And that's what happens to your shadows in your environment. We also have a grid on this softbox down here. And then there's actually usually you can use like a Duvetine or cinefoil to block the back of your practical light so that it doesn't spill onto the LED wall. And then here we actually put a virtual practical light. So we stop the real light from spilling onto the wall, but then we motivate it with a virtual light so that it looks like it's spilling into our environment. So it starts to make sense.
Okay.
Is there any questions before?
Yeah, we have a ton.
Yeah, shoot some off.
Okay, for
Because this is
example,
probably a good
Carlos.
place to be able to explain things too.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Carlos Mesa. Do you think it's time for production companies to want to establish themselves outside the United States, using this technology to produce with tax benefits, as for example in Costa Rica and within free zone regions?
Yes.
That was a long
That was
answer.
fast.
That's a long question. Basically, yes. I mean, I'm currently on a project right now that's using tax incentives outside of the US. So yes, I think that is a great opportunity to use this technology and to get your production made just in general, if you're, no matter what you're doing. But a lot of this, most of the work that I do is outside the United States. So like I said, all of those commercials that we had shot there was all in Peru with a small crew. So it's not nearly, every time I do more outside of the United States, I think, than in the United States. For the most part, unless you're in LA, because then LA is doing a lot, but it's a lot of private studios and production companies where, they're building their own specific workflows and things like that, or integrating tools like the VP Toolkit.
Okay. We have Thomas, and he's asking, what do you think about projectors versus LED in terms of making this more accessible to indie virtual production market? Any pros and cons?
Yeah, so I feel like I was originally known for using projectors for a long time, because that's what I used for all of my original tests. And, when virtual production first started becoming popular and people were buying LED walls, or already had live event companies had LED walls, they'd put out demos and things like that. And then I'd put out a demonstration, or like just a development, like, hey, look, this is kind of what it looks like right now, video. And they would generally look better than that. And I was using a projector. So with a projector, though, you have to understand how to expose a camera, lighting, and how that affects your image and your dynamic range. Because LED walls are very bright. projectors, home projectors, not very bright. So cameras generally need a certain amount of light to be able to expose properly. Cameras have been, most of my tests that I have used projectors. I've done tons of them in my studio in Philadelphia. We did like a 10 by 4 foot screen, and it was awesome. And it was 4K, so we could get really close to it, and you could pretty much focus on the screen without any issues. So I think the projectors could potentially solve a lot of problems. It's just very tough to get the consistency of a projector because you have hot spots, and then you go, okay, now if you do rear projection, you have a hot spot in your screen. It's very hard to get rid of, even with really good screens. The screen is, sometimes unevenly lit. There's ways to get that perfect, but then you're still, you still have to have a lot of lumens. I did a test with 7,000 lumen, 2 projectors connected together. I think they were both like 5,000 lumen or 4,000 lumen. And then after the calculations of, how light falls off, it doesn't just double. It was like we're around 7,000 lumens. And it wasn't enough. I wanted to expose the camera differently, and I wanted to be able to bring up our LED wall image or our virtual image in brightness so that to the camera, all of its highlights and all of its bright spots looked real, and we still had enough room to have some shadows and some information down there, where if you don't have a very bright thing, that means that your bright spots are probably very close to your dark spots. And because you don't have that extra bit of headroom.
Yeah.
So I love projectors. Experiment with them. It's like, if you're going to do it in a home office or something like that, I'm going to show you a demonstration that we're going to be using a TV and a laptop. So I'm 100% use projectors, especially for the indie market. But there's just a certain part where it starts to become very tough to get professional results out of. But, we did if you look up Catalyst Virtual, probably Catalyst Virtual Production on Google, you'll probably find our video where we do a breakdown and talk about, with Drexel University, we did a whole entire production. We did 2 spec commercials that we shot, one was a story and the other one was kind of like an art piece with a dancer and an orb that was in the background. We made it so that we had trackers, and then the trackers would change the orbs. It was like a program that I made. So anytime he'd dance, he actually had control of these big orbs behind him. So that project was great, but there was definitely some exposure and exposure limitations at 7,000 lumens. So I would go check out that video if you could find it, if you're interested if you haven't already seen it.
Okay, before you go on, we have something interesting from Sean Norris. He says, different question. Do you see anybody using virtual production in a live environment, such as for corporate events, virtual galas, or that sort of thing, maybe like the metaverse?
Yeah. So I worked on the Microsoft production. We did a VP Toolkit and Catalyst did a demonstration at the Microsoft Production Summit where we showed just doing an entire in-camera VFX virtual production on a stage, and then answered questions and things like that. And we had a remote director and all that stuff. But for actual live event, I worked on the Walmart's Associates meeting. So it was with Excite Labs, which is Excite Labs when it comes to doing this type of XR stuff. They are very good at it. They've done it many times with high-end clients. And so I had worked as an operator for them for the Walmart's Associates meeting. And we did a mixture of XR and virtual. So the CEO could walk on stage and things would pop up out of the stage and we'd use the XR. And then I was mostly in charge of handling what was behind him, which was a big, huge background that we were changing, and there was animations with, and everything was coordinated with the foreground objects. And then we had a tracked camera on a jib that from that camera's perspective, everything looked accurate so that we could do jib moves and have the background, just as you see here, the camera's view was the whole entire wall, so that multiple cameras could see it. And it was awesome. If you check out Excite Lab, they have a demonstration of it, and somewhere just look for Walmart. And yeah, and it was the same exact stuff that we're doing here. Just we added that extra element. Stipe came in and helped with the Stipe is a tracking company that has on-set services. That's another option for bringing in skilled professionals. Is some companies actually offer their technicians to come out and help with the production, which is wonderful.
Okay, maybe people might be asking what would be the price of something like that. I'm not sure if you have that answer, but that would you know,
I don't.
it would be incredibly highly priced, I'm guessing. So it has to be a very
Well, it depends.
big company.
You may be at a couple of thousand a day. Usually it's a day rate and then an equipment rental. So if your technicians are $1,500 a day and then your equipment rentals, $4,000 a day or whatever that is, probably not $4,000 a day, maybe. And then so they probably have some kind of markup on it. So maybe you're paying a couple grand a day, or they bid specifically on that project at a rate. Maybe they're like, we'll do the whole thing for, $10,000, $12,000, something like that.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
who knows?
Yeah.
We had a lot of prep work and things like that, and that was a pretty high budget
Okay.
project. We had a month of prep.
Let's go on. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see here. Let's move on a little bit. So we got something special for everybody in store. Once it moves on to it here, I think I had this play for a while. Let me fast forward here. So back to this. So basically, we've gone through so much here. We've talked about what is in-camera VFX. We've talked about the general ideas of it. We've talked about how it can be used. We've seen tons of examples of how it can be used in film and in television, and we've broken down some of the aspects that you want to look out for when you're doing these types of in-camera VFX virtual productions or virtual productions. And so I'm going to show you guys a little demonstration setup that I set up, and we're going to go through a virtual environment, and we're going to basically, this is our setup here. We're going to project a virtual environment onto this TV here, and then we're going to use our tracking and our camera to display to you there, and then we're going to be inside of an Unreal Engine environment. We're going to do a scout. I'm standing at that desk right now. There's all of the equipment next to me. If you want some perspective, you can actually see the environment there. And this is the setup that I'm streaming through. You can see my dog Theo on the right there. Oh, he's so cute. It's the Premiere was like, that's enough of that.
The one barking, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that's always barking. So let me just do a little, I have to do a little switch here. Okay, so let me just show everybody around really quick. So what you're looking at is Unreal Engine in the background here. So this is Unreal Engine with the VP Toolkit plugin. So this is the VP Toolkit plugin. This is also the VP Toolkit plugin. We have some of the Unreal Engine UI kind of just hanging out here. This is a configuration that I often set up like this, and sometimes I actually have this. Everything is modular here, so you can kind of just put it wherever you need it. And then in the bottom right corner, I have our, so let's take a look at this scene first. So this is, in the bottom right corner, you see a camera feed, which is live here in a virtual world.
Mhm.
You saw the photos before this of it's just a little guy on a table, which is great, but he looks like he's in some kind of warehouse. And so this is our stage. So this is the configuration that our stage is set up here. We have our camera right here, and then we have our representation of the small little screen that we're projecting to. We can actually see this is kind of what camera sees here. So if you're actually looking through the camera, you can kind of see what that is. So now all of the calibration and setup and camera tracking and all of that was done inside of the VP Toolkit plugin. So this is the UI for that. So we go through and this kind of breaks down so it gets a little smaller. If you just need tracking or something like that. This is how our lens data is being handled. This is right now demoing the VP Toolkit focus solver system. So if you take a look at the screen in the bottom right corner, the camera screen, you can see the focus solver system actually accounts for depth of field in the background. So the background becomes slightly more blurry and it falls off into the background based on where your focal length of your lens is. So another nice little add-on that is just automatically there, and there's some settings for it. So if you want to change and dial it in for your needs, you can. You can actually focus on background objects. So we can rack focus to so this is the physical focus of the camera is stopping right before the lens or going through the LED wall or whatever you're projecting to. But if you stop it right before the thing, it actually can, it can sometimes just make it easier so you don't focus on it. But if you need to rack focus, it will push it. So we can focus on the box or we can focus on the other objects. And then as soon as it switches back into virtual, it does the depth of field solving. So then you have the correct bokeh of your lens as it goes off into the environment.
Okay.
So let's put that away. That's a fun little, like I said, I'm not obsessed with that, I swear. No, just kidding. It's just so much fun to get it, to get it right and to have it look good. So this camera is actually live right now. So this is being tracked in real time. So we can move it around. And we used a second tracking device to actually calibrate this screen's position. So it's fairly accurate. That was in the VP Toolkit plugin, which we have a whole system for setting up your stage and for managing color and managing your screen position and all of the settings that we're so consistently having to get into these environments and set these processes up and these pipelines up, that we've tried to just kind of bridge all those gaps that we can. So real quick, one of the key features of our plugin is its scouting tools. So let's say we want to find a new spot to film. Let's just say that maybe this is a good spot. I can hit the snap stage to view tool and it automatically snaps my stage to my perspective of my camera. Oh, it didn't change on camera, of course. So it's not going to live update unless I hit save, and that's going to take a few seconds. So I'm just going to not do it. But generally the background would snap to there, but I think I've left this running for long enough that we might not be connected into the render that's happening there. But so once we've snapped to a new location, we can actually save that. So we can just go, this will be a demo location that we added. And then we can add that and you'll see it pop up here. And then now when we want to switch back to our other location, we can just snap back to it.
Okay.
It seems like, let's see, that should be still live. Yeah, I would have to hit save for it to transfer over, and that would take a while. So I'll just keep going. But we have all these other locations throughout this building that are set up. Here's some previs actors that I put in that tell our little story. So we actually plan this out. We have different shots here. So once you drop a location marker, you can actually drop a shot marker. These can be used for previs, as these ones are previs here. You can filter it. So if you want to just see your previs here, we have our different shots of our story. Because of the lumen, some of the lighting is not loading here because lumen doesn't like to handle multiple viewports at one time. So when you're prevising, you're kind of just focusing in one area anyway. So you can also store all of your production stuff. So once you've set up all that tracking, you've set up all the lens encoder stuff, and you've gotten it so that you're dialed in and everything looks good, you need to be able to save that. So this is our save for the focus demo, for the demo spot that we just were at over here. So this is back to the demo spot that is live on camera. See, it got a little dark. I hate when that happens, but it's lumen for you in Unreal Engine. It's still, I mean, the tools in Unreal Engine are becoming so amazing and so much easier to use and so much more functional for even very, experienced modelers and people that want to just get in and have good lighting and good environments right off the bat without having to do entirely too much. But you still have to think about optimization. That's where a lot of production companies kind of fall apart with this, and also VFX companies that move into this world. They don't think about the tech viz aspect of things because they're so used to handling it after the fact when it needs to be done, or having a VFX supervisor that's going to be on set and understand what's going to need to be made and be able to budget for that. But for this, all of that stuff gets pushed beforehand. So you want to start thinking about what is your relationship to your physical space and your virtual space. And then so all of these can get loaded directly on set live. So these could be, this could be done months and months in advance before you need to be on a set. So you can understand where your props are going to be, because you don't want your screen like this. So you have to know that your environment can hold whatever size your LED wall is, and make sure that that relationship is correct. Let's just snap back to here. And yeah, so some of the other things that we handle is just basic camera settings. We have sensor sizes for most of the cameras that you would use on a virtual production set. Sony FX9, which you probably wouldn't use that much, but we have the Alexa LF, the Venice, this is the Venice 6K, we want the Venice 8K. So it makes it so it's a lot easier. You can go straight to anamorphic, and that automatically gets updated to your camera. And then you can control basic camera settings here. You can see that the focus solver system is on, and we're logged into multi-user. We have indicators for tracking and changing exposure, things like that. And all of that gets saved into camera markers.
How do you get the knowledge of UA? You started with UA4, I'm guessing, and then moved to UA5. And did you?
Yeah, I started in
get it yourself.
4.2.5, I think. So anytime somebody wants to get into this, I recommend, there's so many videos online of like your first 4 hours in Unreal Engine. And it's like, you just need to, with Unreal Engine, what you have to do is you need to sit down and you need to learn it. If you're coming from a non-3D background and you're just like, I'm a cinematographer and I want to learn Unreal Engine, you have to understand that you're going to be handicapped by your own ability to design and build and modify 3D assets. So like I understand UVs, and I understand how, these models are made and how to optimize them for in-camera VFX, but I couldn't go in and build you a Corvette. Like You know, that's never going to happen. But I can run, you know what I mean? I understand what we need to do to run a team of people that could build you
Exactly.
10
Exactly.
Corvettes.
And you know what you want. You just ask them to improve.
But you have to understand that you're not going to be able to do everything. So if you do want to learn Unreal Engine, you want to learn the basics, you want to learn everything, you want to play with it, you want to enjoy it, you want to get in there and realize how amazing it is. You know, we can go in here and we can just literally just, you know, just move things around and prop design and stylize and do all that, especially now with Lumen. We're pushing the reason why the lighting's being weird in here is because Lumen, even in 5.1.1, is only supposed to have like 3 lights on at a time. And there's a couple more than 3 lights in here. So it's kind of pushing. But yeah, is there...
Yeah, we can, well,
questions?
there's another here question. Let me see. Okay, I will pick Syed. What's the challenge when it comes to matching gamma from LED to our physical set?
So the most important thing with that is your camera. Understanding what your camera's doing. There is specific pipelines to do that. You'd have to be a color scientist to actually build a profile to inject into the pipeline from where Unreal Engine is coming out to where the LED wall is receiving. You would actually have to, we have some diagrams on how these color pipelines are actually set up on our website. So if you go to vp-toolkit.com and you go down to the bottom, there's a little downloads thing. We have a free download that has like a little diagram for how to calibrate the Vive Mars system. There's the pipeline for color, but most of the time you have to look through camera. And what I do is I look at scopes, I look at false color, I look at the vector scopes, and we put up, if we need to, we can put up virtual color charts. And then we match those virtual color charts to real color charts by manipulating the world or how we're translating it or building a new LUT for how it comes through or building or dialing in with the LED wall. And then once we have that color, you get on, once white is white and bright is bright and dark is dark to camera, and you make sure that that translation, because every single camera you use is going to be different, you know, and Alexa Mini LF has like, I don't know, 14, 16 stops. I think it's like 16. And, you know, an iPhone has like 6 or like 8 or something like that. So if you're shooting, depending upon what camera you're shooting, you're going to have a different gamma curve, and different lenses and different sensors are actually going to capture that. And if anybody wants a specific workflow on how to account for that, I can't give it to you because it's not fully available. It's there if you're willing to do the development and learn how to do it and dial it in. But the engine also has tools to manually adjust things like that. So you can change some of the color and how that's coming through. And I actually fairly often, if I'm unable to do, you know, if I have to do a gamma workflow and I can't do HDR, which is PQ, which is literally means that if you have a light in Unreal Engine that is set to 1, it actually sends to your LED wall to make that light in real life 100 nits. So the idea is that your light in Unreal Engine, which is supposed to be calculated fairly accurately, but like you know, you can't calculate fairly accurate light to a certain degree, but it looks real, which is all we need for film and television. And then it puts it on the LED wall at those actual exposure ratios. But sometimes that pipeline isn't easy and it's hard to get it dialed in. So really, you want to look through camera and you want to adjust your lighting in your scene. You want to adjust subtle amounts of post-processing. You want to make sure that you're not doing any screen effects, which are post-processing that's done literally at the screen. That's like bloom, that's chromatic aberration. That's all the stylized things that you'd put almost as like a LUT or like a filter, because all that's just going to be, it's going to look like you're looking through a screen. You'll see it on there, but you can use the color tools if you really need to dial in the gamma and the toe of your image, which is the shadow.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Ian, we are almost coming to the end.
Awesome.
It would be very nice if you can just tell us about VP Toolkit. What are your plans for the future? What do you think about helping, professionals and people around America? So what would be your words for that?
Yeah, so if you love what we're doing, follow us on, if you're interested in what we're doing and you want to learn more about virtual production, go to VPToolkit.com, sign up for our subscription. We send out emails fairly rarely, but it's whenever we're releasing content that we feel like is informational for people that are doing this. We post on Instagram fairly often at VP Toolkit, and you can also find me at Ian Fursa, just at Ian Fursa. And I'm all about trying to connect with everybody. I mean, I can only talk to a certain amount of people at a time. So there's a certain bandwidth that we can hold for trying to help people. But if this is something that your company is serious about or is interested in doing, we have no problem lining up a call and figuring out how we can help, or even just trying to answer questions to help them. But please be serious about it, because time is the essence.
Yeah,
time is the essence. Yeah, and then you can also find me and VP Toolkit on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's been I actually enjoy LinkedIn now. It's funny how our whole industry of developers and people that were working on these types of productions were in Facebook groups, and then you could tell that it became legitimate when we all switched over to LinkedIn, because
it's incredible.
It became,
it's incredible. Yeah.
But if you utilize this technology well, and you build an internal pipeline, you can film anything you want. You just can't focus on it.
Yeah.
That should be my tagline when I
It would be
get
it
in
would be very
in-camera
nice.
VFX. Yeah, get in the in-camera VFX. You can shoot anything you want. You just can't focus on it. I'll see you in the next one. That's how I end all my videos. Seems fitting.
Great. Well, I think, Stephanie, you have some final words, but before you do, I want to thank you, everybody. I want to thank Ian. I think Stephanie found you through LinkedIn, right? So it does work. It does work.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's wild. We at Nova are all about content, all about storytelling. So we work a lot in lead generation and TV series, Bibles, and IPs in that regard. So if you want to get in contact with us, please write to us, contact@novacompany.com. And I think, Ian, if you by any chance start a company of coaching or advisory company, I think you will have a lot of clients. So it's been real nice.
Well, we have real quickly, we do have, so we have what's called the operators training. It's an online course that's available, and it actually includes our plugin. And it's a series of videos and diagrams and explanations. And you also get 6 months of our access to our Slack. So you get some of our support channels and access to some of our, we try and answer everything. And then other people that are part of our program are answering as well. So if this is something that you're serious about and you want to dive into it, we highly recommend. That is very much like step-by-step, here's how you do it.
Excellent. Well, what's the price of that?
It's $3,000.
Oh.
Or no, $4,000.
$4,000, and
yeah, but
what would be the time that you would provide?
It's 3 hours of content, but we recommend doing it in 3 weeks. But if you were to build your own pipeline or try and figure out how to do this soup to nuts, that is generally like a 3 month to 4 month, maybe 5 month process at minimum. And then usually you would still not, have it. But we're now working with a lot of schools that are going to be using that program as their baseline for their education on teaching students how to do this and how to integrate into Unreal Engine projects. Because that's, once you get a studio set up, everybody wants to talk about the business of a studio, but once you get that studio set up, the real work begins, and you have to learn how to quickly integrate all of that into new environments consistently.
That's great. That's a good news. You can look at that. And Stephanie, we have a relationship with a technical college in Europe. It's called Boutique the New School. So there are people studying UE5 already that are graduating with the help of this alliance between Nova and Boutique. And I think we can do something with you in the future if that's the case. So Ian, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
we've
thanks
been
for having
honored
me.
with your help.
Yeah, and well, just the last words. Well, thank you, Ian. Again, it was a pleasure speaking with you about this amazing masterclass that you gave to us and put so much effort into. And also, I want to thank everybody being part of this event. And we hope that you can begin to get more involved into these topics and tools that can make a huge difference for your company and your career. So thank you, everybody, and have a great night. Bye, and thank